Ireland. Land of medieval castles. Land of majestic cliffs. Land of pubs and ancient traditions. A thin mist envelops ancient valleys. Atlantic waves crash against magnificent cliffs. Green valleys stretch to the horizon. Welcome to Ireland. Welcome to an emerald island that faces the Atlantic Ocean. Known as the Emerald Isle, this is a place where time flows to the rhythm of the tides, where the 4 seasons alternate in a single day, where ancient legends still live among misty hills and valleys. But let's start from the beginning. Ireland stretches west of Great Britain and is an island divided into 2 entities: the independent Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, part of the United Kingdom. Despite this political division, Celtic culture and traditions are shared, and the border between the two is almost imperceptible, just a subtle change in the color of road signs. This land is a mosaic of green in infinite shades, a true emerald set in the Atlantic, which is precisely where its nickname Emerald Isle comes from. In fact, about 65% of Irish territory is agricultural or rural, a serene landscape shaped by centuries of coexistence between humans and nature. Despite its northern location, Ireland enjoys a temperate oceanic climate, thanks to the beneficial influence of the Gulf Stream. Here, snow is a rare event, but rain is an almost daily companion. It's not unusual to experience all 4 seasons in a single day. From bright sunshine, to driving rain, to brief gusts of wind and moments of serene calm, all within a few hours. Moreover, traveling the roads that wind through this landscape, you encounter monuments older than the Egyptian pyramids. Newgrange, for example, is a Neolithic site dating back to 3200 BCE, standing as a witness to a civilization that had already understood the secrets of the winter solstice, with the sun's rays on this particular day of the year, penetrating the structure, illuminating the inner corridor. Equally fascinating are the numerous medieval stone structures that dot the Irish landscape, imposing defensive buildings that rise on hills and cliffs, some with majestic circular towers, others surrounded by deep moats, all witnesses to centuries of troubled history between conflicts, conquests, and fierce resistance against invaders. Irish Gaelic, meanwhile, still resonates as the first official language of the Republic, although English is now more widespread. In areas called Gaeltacht, primarily along the western coast, Gaelic is still the everyday language, preserving a 1,000-year-old linguistic heritage. This nation is nonetheless surprisingly young, with one of the lowest median ages in Europe, around 38 years old. And then there's the music, which is the beating heart of Ireland. Musical notes are the common thread that unites past and present, from Celtic rhythms to folk ballads, not to mention traditional instruments like the bodhrán, the tin whistle, the uilleann pipe, and the fiddle, or contemporary celebrated bands like U2. Furthermore, Irish pubs, with their colored facades and evocative names, are not just places to drink, but genuine social and cultural centers. The shamrock, while not the official symbol, is intimately linked to Irish identity, as it's said that St. Patrick used it to explain the concept of the Christian Trinity to the ancient pagan Celts. This also explains Irish folklore, which is a rich tapestry of stories of druids, leprechauns, banshees, and giants. Many natural locations, such as the spectacular Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, with its 40,000 hexagonal basalt columns, are tied to ancient legends. But Irish influence extends well beyond the island's borders, with over 70 million people worldwide claiming Irish heritage, especially in the United States, Canada, and Australia. It's perhaps for this reason that St. Patrick's Day is now celebrated in every corner of the planet, temporarily transforming into Irish even those who don't have a drop of Celtic blood. Finally, in the last 2 decades, Ireland has undergone a profound economic transformation. Especially Dublin has become a European base for tech giants like Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. Thanks to favorable taxation, the island is now known as the European Silicon Valley, a fascinating contrast with the rural image of green pastures and stone cottages. Ireland, therefore, is much more than a simple island in the Atlantic. It's a country that has reinvented itself, keeping its roots firm while looking decisively to the future. But now, let's discover the most incredible places in this nation. Cliffs of Moher. The roar of the Atlantic strikes a rock barrier that rises 214 meters. Here on Ireland's western coast, the Cliffs of Moher have defied the ocean for 350 million years. Water has carved caves at the base of the cliffs. Wind has shaped every layer of rock for 8 kilometers, and thousands of seabirds have made these walls their home. O'Brien's Tower, built in 1835, dominates the highest point. From here, on clear days, the view reaches the Aran Islands in the Connemara Mountains. Paths follow the edge of the cliffs, while the stone changes color with the hours, and legends even speak of a submerged city beneath the waves. The best time to visit this place is between April and September, when the weather is more stable, the days are longer, and nature expresses itself in all its splendor. Cobh. This small port city on the Irish coast hides stories larger than its size. For instance, it was the Titanic's last port of call before its fatal voyage in 1912, or its docks, which saw 3 million Irish people depart during the Great Famine, seeking new lives across the ocean. Here, colorful terraced houses cling to the hills, overlooking the harbor, like spectators to history that has been. The majestic St. Colman's Cathedral, meanwhile, dominates the horizon with its spires pointing skyward. Today, cruise ships dock where people once emigrated, and tourists stroll along the waterfront, unaware they're walking on the same stones, trodden by people who would never return. Moreover, just offshore looms Spike Island, the fortress island nicknamed Ireland's Alcatraz, which for centuries housed prisoners of war, rebels, and common criminals. From here, you can almost hear the echo of the prisoners' voices counting the days while gazing at the freedom of Cobh, so close yet unreachable across the stretch of water. Giant's Causeway, the north coast of Northern Ireland, guards a geological enigma that defies logic. 40,000 basalt columns emerge from the sea, like the keys of a primordial piano. They're perfect hexagonal formations, created not by human hands, but by an ancient volcanic eruption, followed by the rapid cooling of lava. Local tradition tells a different story, of an Irish giant who built this road to reach Scotland and challenge his rival. Here the light changes throughout the day, transforming the landscape from gray to gold, from blue to green, and Atlantic waves crash ceaselessly against the columns in a confrontation that has lasted for 60 million years. Tourists jump from one column to another, while science and folklore dance together, leaving observers in doubt about what to believe. Dublin. Along the banks of the River Liffey, Dublin represents Ireland's cultural epicenter, where literature and brewing tradition intertwine in the soul of the city. Trinity College, which is the island's oldest academic institution, houses the spectacular Long Room. This impressive gallery with oak arches protects thousands of ancient volumes, creating an atmosphere reminiscent of a cathedral of knowledge. In the lively Temple Bar district, elegant Georgian-style buildings look out onto cobbled streets that pulse with artistic life. Not far away, Dublin Castle stands majestically on the foundations of an ancient Viking settlement, and its walls speak of centuries of history, conflicts, and resistance that have shaped the capital's identity. Finally, walking along the wide Georgian streets like Marion Square and St. Stephen's Green, the colorful portals of typical Dublin houses have an elegance from another time, while the modern glass buildings of the financial district along the river show the contemporary face of a European capital in continuous evolution. Ring of Kerry. A 179-kilometer circuit that doesn't just show the Irish coast, but tells the story of this land across centuries. Here, the coast meets the ocean in a way that challenges expectations. In fact, as roads wind among villages, suspended in time, the landscape transforms with every curve. Tourists are usually attracted by the spectacular coastal views, but they return home carrying in their hearts the authenticity of the place, encounters with locals, and their stories. Along the route, ancient circular towers and ruins of medieval castles stand silent, while stone fortresses blend harmoniously with the wild landscape surrounding them. The Ring isn't just a tourist route, but a journey through Irish culture, where every stone has witnessed the passage of Vikings, monks, and rebels. Burren National Park. A lunar landscape in Irish territory that challenges the expectations of anyone visiting it for the first time. This 1,500-hectare territory doesn't feature trees or typical Irish vegetation, but exposes bare limestone rocks that tell 340 million years of Earth's history. The paradox of the Burren, however, reveals itself when Arctic, Mediterranean, and alpine plants bloom side by side in the cracks of the stone, creating an ecosystem that shouldn't and couldn't exist. Colorful flowers emerge from the gray rock every spring, while Neolithic constructions blend with the landscape. Burren also preserves the highest concentration of megalithic tombs in Ireland, testimony to how prehistoric humans found meaning in this seemingly inhospitable place. Cork. A city that doesn't present itself like other Irish companions, but reveals its identity through streets arranged on different levels and bridges connecting neighborhoods. Cork develops around the River Lee, which divides and then reunites, creating an urban island. Streets wind on different levels with bridges connecting neighborhoods and stories, but what surprises is certainly the covered market, where vendors have offered local products in the same place since 1788, keeping alive a tradition that has resisted even the supermarket era. The Tower of St. Anne's Church, on the other hand, allows visitors to ring the bells that have marked the passing of time in the city for centuries. Moreover, residents define themselves as Corkonians before Irish, reflecting a local spirit that earned the city the nickname Rebel Capital during the struggle for Irish independence. Killarney National Park. In the heart of Ireland lies a territory that preserves the country's past. Founded in 1932, this park doesn't simply offer nature, but reveals a world where history and wilderness exist in perfect balance. Deer cross forests that have grown undisturbed for centuries, while lakes reflect moving clouds, as they have done for millennia. What surprises about this place is how humans have interacted with this space without dominating it. For example, we find the Victorian estate of Muckross House, surrounded by gardens that gradually blend with the native forest. Or not far from here, on the shores of Lough Derg, the suggestive ruins of Ross Castle are reflected in the placid waters of the lake, evoking the times when the O'Donoghue clans dominated the region. Moreover, the paths crossing the oak and yew forests offer privileged glimpses into the life of local mammals, from red foxes to martens, which thrive in this protected ecosystem. Connemara. A wild region in Western Ireland. This territory represents not just a landscape, but a cultural refuge where Celtic traditions survive not as tourist attractions, but as lived life. Villages are scattered among hills and lakes, connected by narrow roads that follow paths used for centuries. What distinguishes Connemara from other rural areas, however, is the constantly changing light, transforming the same place multiple times a day as clouds and sun alternate in rapid succession. The stone walls, furthermore, extend for thousands of kilometers, built without mortar and resistant to Atlantic winds that would bend even modern structures. And finally, there are the Connemara ponies, a unique horse breed in the world that roams semi-wild in this landscape for hundreds of years, a symbol of a land that produces resistant creatures like its inhabitants. Galway. A city where musical notes come out of open doors, creating a soundtrack that changes with every step. Galway isn't visited, but lived through encounters in its medieval streets, where street musicians compete with artists of all kinds to capture the attention of passers-by. The city is divided between the ancient Latin Quarter, where merchant tribes controlled trade in the Middle Ages, and the modern university, which brings energy and innovation. The River Cobh runs through the center, while markets and contemporary festivals transform the city into an open-air stage. The cathedral, meanwhile, has stood since 1965 on the riverbanks, with its dome dominating the city skyline, telling the story of a faith that has shaped Irish identity. Finally, the city's pubs keep alive the tradition of music sessions, where local musicians and visitors spontaneously join in performances that sometimes last until dawn. Dingle Peninsula. A peninsula that extends into the Atlantic, like a finger pointing toward America. Here the road narrows until it becomes a path, while villages are reduced to groups of houses that resist wind and time. Dingle has a concentration of over 2,000 historical monuments in a very contained space. For example, stone circles tell of ceremonies from 4,000 years ago, while Celtic crosses testified to the arrival of Christianity. Offshore, Blasket Island preserves the memories of the last community that abandoned it in 1953. When the Irish government decided that life there had become too dangerous. Here, moreover, dolphins approach visitors' boats as they did with Bronze Age fishermen. Often, those who come for a day stay for a week, captured by the rhythm of a place where time is measured by the tides. Aran Islands. Three stone islands that emerge from the ocean as witnesses to unparalleled human determination. Here, people created fertile ground where none existed, carrying seaweed and sand onto the bare rocks to generate cultivable fields. Stone walls extend for kilometers, dividing the territory into tiny plots that protect crops from Atlantic winds. These barriers were built without mortar, yet they've stood for centuries, thanks solely to the skill with which each stone interlocks with others. The residents, moreover, live between two worlds, the first being the ancient one of Celtic legends, and the second the modern one of tourist ferries. It's also worth remembering the prehistoric fort of Dunguaire, which stands on the edge of a sheer cliff, defying the sea and time with the same impassivity as its builders. Rock of Cashel. A rocky outcrop that rises from the surrounding plain in a sea of green. This collection of medieval buildings represents not just a monument, but a crucial chapter in Ireland's conversion to Christianity. Tradition says that here, St. Patrick baptized the King of Munster in the 5th century, forever changing the course of Irish history. The roofless cathedral allows the sky to become part of the architecture, while the round tower stands like a beacon, visible for kilometers. There are also Celtic crosses in the cemetery, telling stories through symbols, mixing paganism and Christianity in a unique visual language. You can also climb the 61 steps of the bell tower and be rewarded with a view that the kings of Ireland considered worthy of a divine dwelling. Kinsale. A port where naval history and gastronomy intertwine, in a story few expect to find in a fishing village. Streets wind uphill from the sea toward the hill, in a labyrinth of narrow, colorful streets that hide restaurants renowned throughout the country. What transforms Kinsale from a simple coastal location to a cult destination is the event that took place offshore in 1915, when a German submarine sank the Lusitania, pushing America toward World War I. Charles Fort's star-shaped fort, moreover, has guarded the bay entrance since 1677, a witness to battles and sieges that have marked Ireland's destiny. Food festivals, meanwhile, attract chefs from around the world to this southwestern corner of the island, where fish passes from boats to plates in a few hours. Wicklow Mountains. A mountain range that doesn't impress with its height, but surprises with the history it holds among valleys and forests. This granite massif rises a few kilometers from Dublin, yet contains hideouts where Irish rebels took refuge for years, escaping British authorities. Paths cross landscapes that have hosted film sets for international productions, transforming these mountains into movie stars without many knowing it. Here we find a contrast between the wilderness of its peaks and the aristocratic mansions that dot the valleys, testimony to an era when the English conquest redesigned the territory. Moreover, water flows everywhere, also creating sudden lakes and waterfalls that appear after rain, only to disappear. Glendalough. A hidden valley among the Wicklow Mountains, where two lakes meet, and time seems to have stopped in the 6th century. This monastic settlement represents not just an archaeological site, but a portal to an era when Ireland was called the Island of Saints and Scholars. The monks who lived here copied manuscripts, preserving knowledge that would otherwise have been lost. Here, stone structures still stand after 1,500 years, with the 30-meter-tall round tower rising like a spiritual beacon, visible from afar. Paths branch from the monastic center toward the surrounding forest, and the valley continues to serve as a refuge, no longer from Vikings as in the past, but from the frenetic rhythm of modern life. Those who walk here follow the same paths traveled by pilgrims for centuries, in a cycle of rediscovery that renews with each generation. Powerscourt Gardens. A world created by a family's vision that transformed a wild hill into a theater of nature and architecture. These gardens represent not just a green space, but tell 250 years of Irish history through plants and sculptures. The waterfall, which is the highest in Ireland, concludes a water path that begins as a gentle stream and ends in a roar that echoes in the valley. Powerscourt is a fusion of styles, with Italian mixing with Japanese, while French influenced dialogues with Celtic traditions in an unprecedented botanical experiment. The seasons, moreover, completely change the visitor's experience, with flowers blooming in calculated succession to ensure color all year. The estate risked abandonment in the 70s after a devastating fire, but the restoration brought back to life not only buildings and plants, but also gardening techniques that seemed lost. Achill Island. A strip of land extending into the Atlantic, connected to the mainland by a bridge that has forever changed the destiny of its inhabitants. This island preserves traces of human settlements dating back 5,000 years, with abandoned villages that tell of the Great Famine, when entire families were forced to emigrate or starve. Here we find a great variety of landscapes concentrated in a limited space, with sheer cliffs giving way to beaches that seem transported from the Caribbean. There's also Granuaile's Tower, which recalls the time when a female pirate controlled these waters, challenging conventions and authorities in the 16th century. Finally, cyclists and hikers travel the island's coastal roads throughout the year, facing Atlantic winds and challenging climbs to reach panoramic points that reward every effort with idyllic views. Kylemore Abbey. A Gothic castle reflected in a lake, not as a relic of a feudal past, but as testimony to a tragic love story. The building was constructed by Mitchell Henry for his wife Margaret, but she died before she could live in it. This place represents not just a tourist attraction, but continues to live as a school and monastery, where Benedictine nuns keep alive an educational tradition begun in 1920. The walled gardens, moreover, recreate a microclimate that allows exotic plants to thrive in one of Ireland's rainiest regions. The miniature Gothic church, on the other hand, replicates the style of European cathedrals on a smaller scale, with a level of precision that reveals the builder's obsession with detail. Those who cross the Abbey's gates enter a world where spirituality, education, and beauty coexist as parts of a single project that defies time. Kilkenny. Often described as Ireland's most charming medieval city, it boasts a rich historical heritage, with its imposing Norman castle overlooking the River Nore. The city is a true fabric of history, with streets winding among well-preserved buildings, such as St. Canice's Cathedral and Roth House, which is a 16th century residence now transformed into a museum. Kilkenny is also a craft center, with numerous pottery studios and glassworks, as well as a vibrant calendar of cultural events, including the Kilkenny Arts Festival. Moreover, the city not only celebrates its medieval heritage, but continues to be a place of creativity and innovation, attracting artists and history enthusiasts from around the world. Finally, not to be missed are its characteristic medieval alleys, such as the Medieval Mile, which connects the castle to the cathedral, offering visitors the opportunity to completely immerse themselves in the historical atmosphere that permeates every corner of this enchanting Irish town. Dublin. A village that presents itself as a handful of colored houses along a coastal road, but hides the beating heart of traditional Irish music. This place doesn't boast monuments or man-made attractions, but offers a sound experience that visitors carry with them for a long time, even after departure. Pubs transform every evening into informal music schools, where local musicians and travelers share ancient melodies. This hamlet is strategically located. In fact, it's the gateway to the Cliffs of Moher and the Aran Islands, creating a unique tourist and cultural crossroads. The small harbor once welcomed fishermen, while the ruins of Dunguaire Castle dominate the hill above the village. Life here still follows the rhythm of the seasons more than the clock, with shops that close during Atlantic storms and reopen when the sun returns to illuminate the facades of the stone houses. Dunguaire Castle. Galway Bay embraces a 16th century castle that dominates a small rocky promontory. Dunguaire wasn't born as a luxury residence, but as a defensive fortress of the O'Hynes family in turbulent times. Tourists today cross the same bridge that was once raised at sunset to protect inhabitants from enemy raids. The evenings, on the other hand, transform this historic monument with medieval banquets held within its ancient stone walls, while actors perform Irish plays between courses. From the main tower, there's also a view that extends to the Burren Hills, while during high tide, water laps at the foundations, creating the illusion that the entire building is floating on the sea. Donegal. The northwestern extremity of Ireland hides a territory still untamed. Distant from the most beaten tourist routes, this county maintains an authenticity that is disappearing elsewhere. In coastal villages, for example, Gaelic isn't a curiosity for visitors, but the everyday language. The town of Donegal, with its historic center gathered around Diamond Square, serves as the gateway to this land of contrast, where traditional music festivals fill the streets. Slively cliffs, meanwhile, plunge into the sea from vertiginous heights, 3 times higher than the more famous Cliffs of Moher. And then there's also Dunguaire Castle, a 16th century fortress that stands on a peninsula, testifying to the era when the McSweeney clans controlled these wild lands. Exploring this region means getting lost among remote valleys and deserted beaches, away from crowds, to savor an Ireland that resists the passing of time. Adar. The River Meg flows placidly beside one of Ireland's most photographed villages. Adar reveals 8 centuries of Irish history, with thatched roof houses lining the main road, maintained not as attractions, but as functional homes. In 1200, the Fitzgeralds founded the first monastery here, beginning a religious tradition that led to the construction of 3 abbeys. Their ruins testify to the passage from medieval glories to the turmoil of the Reformation, when many were confiscated and repurposed. The village center once hosted the market, where farmers and merchants exchanged goods and news, while today this social role has been taken over by pubs, where beer flows along with stories. Glenveigh National Park. Ireland's second largest national park extends over 16,000 hectares in the heart of Donegal. Created in 1984, it protects territory shaped by glaciers during the last ice age. Lough Derg Lake marks the center of this nature reserve, stretching for kilometers among mountains that seem to touch the clouds. Nature here expresses itself with primordial force. Peat bogs form a mosaic of colors that change with the seasons, while heaths extend as far as the eye can see. There are also native oak forests slowly reclaiming territories from which they had been eliminated to create pastures, while paths cross different habitats, revealing hidden waterfalls and panoramas that few tourists know. Glenveigh represents Wild Ireland, the one that existed before human intervention, a refuge for threatened species and for visitors seeking solitude. Howth. A coastal village rises on the tip of a rocky peninsula, northeast of Dublin. Trains bring visitors here every half hour, transforming the journey from urban to coastal in a few minutes. The harbor doesn't serve just as a tourist attraction, but continues to function as a base for fishermen who supply local restaurants with fresh fish every day. A coastal path surrounds the entire peninsula, passing cliffs, lighthouses, and ocean views that have made this place popular since Victorian times. Regarding Howth's spiritual panorama, it's defined by two religious buildings that represent distinct periods of local history. We find, in fact, the ancient St. Mary's Abbey, whose 13th century ruins testify to the first Christian settlements, and the Church of the Assumption, whose majestic dome still serves today as a landmark for sailors returning to port. Usually, Dubliners come here on weekends to escape the city, following a tradition that has lasted for generations. Gap of Dunlough. A deep cut between Ireland's highest mountains extends for 11 kilometers of narrow winding road. The Gap of Dunlough opens between the McGillicuddy's Reeks, revealing 5 lakes connected by the River Lough, which flows through the valley. Irish mythology attributes the creation of this passage to the legendary Finn McCool, who would have divided the mountains with a stroke of his magic sword. Moreover, ancient testimonies of human settlements dot the route, telling centuries of life in this isolated environment. Tourists cross the gap on foot or in horse-drawn carriages, encountering sheep flocks and small farms that still maintain very ancient agricultural practices. Bantry. Ireland's deepest bay embraces this port, where naval history intertwines with Irish revolts. Bantry doesn't exist just as a tourist destination, but as a witness to events that have changed the course of the nation. The central square hosts the weekly market in the same place for centuries, while fishermen continue to bring their catch from the port. Bantry House, meanwhile, overlooks the bay, preserving treasures collected during the European Grand Tour and gardens designed to create perspective illusions. Moreover, the town's streets radiate from the port toward the inland, with stone buildings in vivid colors aligning along the waterfront, testimony to an architecture that combines Georgian influence with local maritime tradition. Portrush. The northern coast of Northern Ireland hosts a seaside town where families have been vacationing for more than 150 years. Portrush, however, doesn't live just in summer, but pulses year-round as the gateway to the Giant's Causeway. The city's 3 beaches extend for kilometers, also attracting surfers who challenge Atlantic waves in every season. These beaches, besides being a paradise for sea lovers, also offer enchanting panoramic walks, where the blue of the sea blends with the horizon, giving visitors moments of peace and connection with the wild nature of this fascinating coast. And then there's also Barry's Amusement Park, which resists the digital era with vintage rides that continue to entertain children and adults. Derg. A lake that extends for 32 kilometers along the River Shannon, forming a natural border between 3 Irish counties. Derg represents not just an aquatic ecosystem, but a place where spirituality and recreation meet in unexpected ways. Station Island, for example, which is an island in the middle of the lake known as St. Patrick's Purgatory, attracts thousands of pilgrims each year who come to practice rituals dating back to the Middle Ages. Many even walk barefoot and fast for 3 days, seeking a connection with the divine in an age of digital distractions. Villages on the shores maintain a rhythm of life tied to the water, while medieval ruins dot the surrounding hills, recalling both monks seeking isolation and clans controlling territory through towers and castles. Blarney Castle. Not just an ancient castle, but the home of the legendary Stone of Eloquence, which according to tradition gifts the gift of storytelling to those who kiss it, attracting visitors from around the world. This 15th century fortress rises on even older foundations, and to reach the legendary stone, visitors must lie down and bend backward over a 25-meter void. Behind this tradition lies a past of resistance against the English crown, when the castle owner used words as a weapon against Queen Elizabeth I. Moreover, the gardens surrounding the structure tell equally fascinating stories, with paths leading to different rock formations, where Druids, who were priests, scholars, and judges of Celtic culture, practiced their rites, and where witches are said to have found refuge. Here, legends aren't simple attractions, but continue to shape the experience of places. Carlingford. In the northeastern corner of Ireland, where mountain meets sea, hides a village that resists the passage of time. Founded by Vikings more than 1,000 years ago, it maintains the medieval layout of streets so narrow that two carts couldn't pass side by side. The Norman walls served for defense in an era when this port connected Ireland with Scotland and continental Europe. King John of England, on the other hand, visited this place in 1210, leaving his name to the castle that still stands guard at the entrance to the harbor. Finally, the narrow medieval streets are home to welcoming traditional pubs and artisan shops, which blend harmoniously with the ancient stone structures, where tourists can stop to savor local cuisine, immersed in an atmosphere that tells centuries of maritime and commercial history. Concluding this visual journey through Ireland, we've moved from the enchantment of its ancient megalithic sites and picturesque villages to dynamic cities and spectacular cliffs, exploring together not only places but also curiosities that make every corner of this island unique. We hope the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the extraordinary beauty of this fascinating emerald land.